Welcome to the Good Reading Magazine podcast. Good Reading is a monthly magazine dedicated to books and reading and aims to help readers discover their next favourite book. You can find out more about the books discussed on today's podcast at goodreadingmagazine.com.au.
Inga Simpson's early books include Mr. Wig, Nest, and Where the Trees Were. Her first book for children, The Book of Australian Trees, illustrated by Alicia Rogerson, was published in 2021. Inga's works of fiction include The Last Woman in the World, Willow Man, and The Thinning. Tannya Harricks is an illustrator and artist whose practice draws inspiration from the Australian landscape, its animals, and her love of adventure. Tannya has illustrated 6 picture books, including Night Watch, Mallee Sky, Heartbeat of the Land by Kathy Freeman and Coral Vass, and the multi-award-winning Dingo by Claire Saxby. Today I'm talking to Inga Simpson and Tannya Harricks about their new picture book for children, The Peach King. Inga, Tannya, welcome to the Good Reading Podcast.
Thanks for having me on. Us on.
Yes, thank you. Hi, Greg.
Inga, The Peach King is your second book for children, but not your first book about trees. In fact, Understory, your 2017 memoir, documents a decade living in a Queensland forest. I reckon you've got a thing for trees.
Yeah, I really do. You could probably make an argument that all of my books are about trees. Even Willow Man, the cricket novel, is actually about, the willow tree, the particular species that you make cricket bats from. So, yeah, trees and birds are really my big loves in the natural world more broadly. But yeah, I pay a lot of attention to trees walking around the world and in my kind of imaginary or creative kind of world too.
And that's pretty evident in The Peach King. But Tannya, do you share Inga's passion for trees?
Well, I'm looking out my studio window right now at a whole lot of bushland, which is amazing. And I live amongst trees as well. I grew up on the south coast around bush. And yeah, I love trees for the reminder that we're a part of nature and we're not separate to it. And that's why I also love this story of Inga's about these trees.
Inga, back to you. And again, about firsts and seconds. Your first book for children, The Book of Australian Trees, was all about Australian native trees, the red ironbark, the grey gum, the Moreton Bay fig, the bunya pine. But this is a story about peach trees. Why peach trees?
Well, the story has its origins in my first novel, Mr. Wig. And in that story, Mr. Wig, who, it's about him, it's from his point of view, and an older man who has a wonderful, if not semi-magical, orchard. And he tells his grandkids, Lachlan and Fiona, this story about a peach king and an orchard queen. So that's where it sort of runs right through the book. Whenever he has them stay over, he tells this story and they want to hear it again and so forth. So it runs throughout the book. And yeah, that sort of sparked the original idea to turn that into a kid's book somehow. But yeah, it has taken a different shape in the end. But that's where it began, a little peach tree in a very mature orchard.
In life's quieter moments, I sometimes ponder what make up my top 5 fruits. And Inga, clearly yours is a peach. I nearly always have to expand to at least 10, but peaches are always in there, always in that top 5.
Are you asking me to rank mine?
If you'd like to.
Peaches are definitely in there. My own grandfather, there's a little of him in Mr. Wig, the book, and the made-up man. He did have a wonderful orchard, and the peaches that he grew and picked himself and, handed to me or refrigerated, to cool them in summer and gave them to me were the best I've ever tasted, and particularly the white peaches. I imagined yellow peaches for the Peach King, but white peaches, they're so delicate, you couldn't pick them ripe, and transport them anywhere. And so the best place to eat them is within walking distance of the tree. So yeah, peaches, I do love the flavour of them, and they're kind of only around for a short period of time, and they grow where I live too. But it's that emotional connection, I think, to my grandfather and him slicing them up and handing them over, and just like it's like the flavour of childhood that takes on kind of magical mythic qualities over time.
And Tannya, what about you? Peaches king for you?
Oh, I love peaches, and I love that multisensory sort of connection that Inga talks about there with, you remember things according to certain food memories and, where you were at that time. And um, for me, I think cherries are a highlight each year, and they're so expensive now, but growing up, they signified end of school, summer, and all that that brings. Plus, I've realized peaches and cherries, apples, another favorite, all have blossoms, and they're all beautiful trees. So you see it really signifies a change. Um, so through life, I guess they're the signifiers of what's happening in the world and sort of things to look forward to.
Inga, the Peach King sits among quite a diverse portfolio of more than 8 books, ranging from nature writing to memoir to thrillers. But how do you do the pivot to writing for children?
I guess because this one had its origins in Mr. Wig, it was sort of easy to start with. Simplifying it down to a children's picture book, though, I find harder. So yeah, it is quite a pivot to me. Getting it down to 800 words was one of the biggest challenges of my writing life, I have to say. I'm not a writer of brevity, put it that way. Yeah, I was discussing it with Kate Stevens, who was children's editor at the time and who had edited most of my adult books. I talked to her about my experience of the bushfires and that some of the Araluen peach orchards had been burned. And yeah, she suggested putting that into the story somehow, and it just came alive. Like, yeah, there was the drama, there was the narrative arc, and I was still recovering from those experiences, and so it was front and foremost in my mind. And yeah, it once I had that and thought of it as just another story, I found it much easier. You can put a block up for yourself, I think, when you're shifting genres or forms, that you have to do something different when, yeah, really it's just the same, but a compressed format. And knowing too that the illustrator is going to come along, and artist is going to respond to those words, and that the words will be telling the story too, that I don't have to do all the work. That was quite fun too. I enjoyed that part of it. And, when it came to being a more collaborative process, I enjoyed that too, because it's normally so solitary.
And Tanya, how was that collaborative process for you?
Reading Inga's story, I could see a lot of like a big story, and it was exciting about the landscape and that sort of juxtaposition of the natural and the agricultural landscape, animals. But what I loved was also that trees were central characters, and their community was the one that we saw the drama through. So through the eyes of the tree and not through the human ego. Or, we normally think that we're the ones suffering. We don't see it in that perspective. So that's really beautiful. I think for younger readers as well to feel that sort of emotion of the tree community and the animals and the whole of nature. There's plenty of space for imagination, and that's where the visual storytelling as well can bring some layers and add to the layers that are already there with all the emotion and the drama. I mean, the biggest drama when I read the story, I couldn't stop thinking about the scene. It's like a battle scene between the grasshoppers and the birds, and I was just so excited. In my mind, I had this big filmic, I wanted it to be almost a film because it's just epic. And so that part of nature is really exciting. And I think to have someone else write, I mean, I'm not a writer, so I feel it's just incredible to use that to respond to. And I think so many artists do that in the art world, but children's books are such a beautiful resource for young readers or any reader to see that sort of play from words and pictures.
I wanted to ask you also how your natural style as an artist might feed through to your style as an illustrator for books. Do you feel that you need to change your style in some way, to adapt in some way?
Well, I tend to use materials that I normally use because I'm comfortable with them, so I can achieve. So for this story, I did think because books sometimes need to be ready for reproduction sooner than, oil paint will dry, although we had plenty of time. So, and I kept being reassured by the lovely editors and publisher that there was plenty of time. But I did try acrylics, which I don't normally use, and I just didn't feel in love with them. So I started again in the oil. So I did a lot of experimenting, but came back to oils, which I really love. So they would be my medium of choice. And then I look at, I mean, I always go and research whether I'm painting for myself or for a text or a story or a commission, and just research it from different areas, like in real life or whatever it is, just to get some sort of gathering of ideas and material first, which in either context, a book or my own work sort of is the same scenario.
Yeah, I thought you really went above and beyond doing the whole lot again in a different medium. Yeah.
It was a special project and it just was a lovely story that I really felt attached to. So you become part of it and you have to give it everything, I think.
Tannya, I really love the illustration of the peach blossoms. It just made me think, do you work from nature?
Well, with the peach blossoms, well, thank you. And I did actually for peach blossoms because you can find a lot of reference online, and these days you can't always trust if it's AI generated or whatever. And peach blossom is such a brief, it exists so briefly, so you can't just go and see it when you need to. But I was lucky that an orchard near me, probably half an hour away, happened to be in blossom, must have been a year ago. And I went and I actually sketched, took photos, just looked up close. But I think it's always good, even with color, it's such they're not realistic interpretations, but it's good to have that sort of the benefit of knowing that you've seen it or felt it, smelt it.
I also noticed that almost every page features a dog in the landscape. I wondered if that was your trademark or something insisted upon by the author.
Well, that just happened. It's interesting. Um, it just actually happened and I didn't realize it. And I do paint dogs a lot and I love dogs. Nobody insisted, but I think I felt that trees there are lots of animals in there, but a consistent figure that's not a person. I did one with a dog, a few sketches, and I thought the dog could possibly sit alongside the story of growth and change and be there with the trees and suggest a farmer and a family, and it's a suggestion of that. And then the idea that there was a pup, and I mean, it's still loose. It's not very sort of, it's not a whole story there about a dog, but you sort of see it and see that the dog is part of that change and growth over the seasons that we see happen throughout the story, alongside the main characters of the trees.
Inga, the Peach King is the fable. In this case, the story, though, is dictated by natural forces, the seasonal change, climate events, natural or unnatural. Is a fable a fair description? And if so, what did you want the moral of the story to be, if there is a moral?
I mean, on one level, it's just my reality. I mean, I think trees are beings, and I imagine that they have lives that we don't pay attention to or know much about, and it's based in reality, absolutely based in reality. I guess the point of view and the Peach King having the power to, stave off grasshoppers or birds who might eat all their fruit and that sort of thing. Yeah, that's stretching into a fable, into the imaginary or the mythic. But yes, I guess it's a fable in that there are kind of compressed elements of I wouldn't say morality, but of human capacity. It's a way of thinking about human capacities, say for resilience, shifting from being a young person to an older person, taking on responsibility, to think about all of those things in a story form that is, entertaining, enjoyable, digestible, hopefully. But yeah, I guess that's what fables have always been. I balk a bit at the moral, the word moral. So I don't know if it's a moral. I mean, it's meant to be inspiring or encouraging, that a young person could speak up, make a difference, do something brave, encourage others to join with them in doing something. So yeah, more of a inspiring story than a moral one, perhaps.
Inga and Tannya, thanks so much for indulging me in a conversation about fruit and for joining me on the Good Reading podcast.
Oh, thanks, Greg. Been an absolute pleasure. And thanks, Tannya. Lovely to chat.
Thank you both so much. It's been wonderful.
I've been talking to Inga Simpson and Tannya Harricks about their new picture book for children, The Peach King. It's published by Lothian, and you can find it at goodreadingmagazine.com.au. My name's Greg Dobbs, and thanks for listening. Subscribe to Good Reading print and online magazine at goodreadingmagazine.com.au.